Picture this. It's a random Wednesday afternoon. You're sitting in your car in a parking lot, not going anywhere, just sitting. You just checked your savings account. You've been working for 6, maybe 8 years. You're not irresponsible. You don't blow money on stupid things. You have a job, you pay your bills, you even have a little automated transfer going into savings every month. And the number staring back at you is $11,000. Maybe $14,000, maybe $22,000 if it's been a good year, but it is nowhere close to $100,000. And the worst part isn't the number. The worst part is that you cannot figure out why. Because by every measure you can think of, you're doing the right things, and it still isn't working. Here's what nobody in that moment tells you. The $100,000 barrier isn't a math problem. It's not an income problem. It's not even a discipline problem in the way most people mean it. It is a systems problem. And the people who crack it don't do it by trying harder. They do it by understanding something specific about the way money behaves at this level that almost nobody explains out loud. My name is Tom, and I spend a genuinely unhealthy amount of time studying why some people quietly accumulate wealth while other people with similar incomes, sometimes higher incomes, never get ahead. And the $100,000 savings barrier is one of the most fascinating, most misunderstood, most quietly devastating thresholds in personal finance. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this video, and let's actually break this down.
According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the median American household has about $8,000 in liquid savings. Not retirement accounts, not home equity, actual accessible savings. $8,000. The median, meaning half of all American households have less than that sitting in a savings account. Now layer on this. The median household income in America is around $74,000 a year, which means the typical American family is earning $74,000 and saving roughly $8,000 total. Not per year, total, accumulated, everything. Read that again. And before you think this is a story about people who are bad with money, consider this. Americans are not spending their paychecks on champagne and sports cars. The Bureau of Labor Statistics breaks down where the money actually goes. Housing eats about $1,885 a month. Transportation, another $913. Food, $691. Healthcare, utilities, insurance, childcare. By the time you run the full list, the average household is spending roughly $5,577 every month just to exist. That's $66,924 a year in baseline living costs. On a $74,000 gross income, that becomes maybe $56,000 take-home after taxes, which means the average American family is running on a margin of about $9,000 a year before anything goes sideways, before the transmission dies, before the ER visit, before the water heater, before the kid needs braces. The margin is razor thin, and one bad quarter wipes the whole thing out.
So the first thing I want you to understand is this. Most people are not failing to reach $100,000 because they are lazy or clueless. They are failing because the system they are living inside of was not designed to produce $100,000. It was designed to consume everything they earn and leave them just solvent enough to keep showing up on Monday. But here's the part that makes this interesting, because there are people inside that same system earning similar incomes, navigating the same grocery bills and car repairs and insurance premiums who crack $100,000 and then $200,000, and then they just keep going quietly, without a dramatic income jump, without an inheritance, without a lucky break. And when you look at what they did differently, it is almost offensively simple. But simple is not the same thing as obvious. So let's go through it.
Reason 1. They are paying the wrong things first. There is a concept in behavioral economics called payment sequencing, and it is quietly responsible for more financial failure than almost any other single factor. Here's how it works for the average person. Paycheck hits, rent comes out, car payment comes out, utilities, subscriptions, food, gas, all of it gets handled. And then at the end of the month, whatever is left over goes to savings, if anything is left over. This is called paying yourself last, and it is the financial equivalent of eating everything on your plate and saving the best part for the end, except that by the end, there is no plate left because life happened. The people who hit $100,000 do the opposite. They automate a savings transfer the same day their paycheck arrives, before they see it, before they feel it, before any version of their brain has a chance to decide that the money is needed elsewhere. The savings leave immediately, and the rest of their life adjusts to whatever remains. This sounds simple. It is simple,
But bank rate data shows that only 44% of Americans could cover a $1,000 emergency from savings, which means that 56% of Americans are still paying themselves last and hoping the math works out. It does not work out. It has never worked out, and it will not work out. The reason this matters so much, specifically for the $100,000 threshold, is that every single time an unexpected expense appears, and they always appear, it doesn't just pause your progress, it reverses it. You're not just not moving forward, you're actively losing ground. And every reversal resets the psychological clock on how long this is going to take, which is what eventually makes people quit. Pay yourself first. Automate it. Remove the decision entirely. That is the first lock. Everything else is downstream of this.
Reason 2. They are treating savings like a category instead of a number. Here is something that happens to almost everyone who starts trying to save money. They decide they want to save more. They feel motivated, they open a savings account, they transfer $200 a month, maybe $300, and they feel like they are doing the thing. And then life absorbs it. The savings account becomes the emergency fund, which becomes the car repair fund, which becomes the vacation fund, which becomes the buffer account that covers the months where the margins get too tight. And 2 years later, they have $4,000 in that account instead of $7,200, and they cannot explain where the difference went. The problem is that savings as a category is too vague to protect. When you save money into a single undifferentiated pool labeled savings, your brain does not treat it as off limits. It treats it as available, and available money gets used, always. The people who cross $100,000 are obsessively specific about what each dollar is for. They have an emergency fund, a real one, 3 to 6 months of expenses in a separate high-yield account with no debit card attached. They have a sinking fund for known future expenses, the new tires, the annual insurance payment, the home repair they can see coming from 18 months out. And they have a growth account, a long-term savings and investment vehicle that is psychologically labeled "do not touch under any circumstances." When these buckets exist and are separate and are funded in a specific order, the $100,000 target becomes structural. It is not a goal that requires heroic willpower. It is an outcome that the system produces automatically. Without the structure, it requires willpower every single month forever, and willpower is the most unreliable resource in personal finance. The system wins, willpower loses.
Reason 3. The invisible leak they never find. There is a number buried in almost every American's monthly budget that is doing enormous damage, and most people never isolate it. It doesn't show up as one big, obvious line item. It shows up as 23 small ones. Streaming subscriptions they forgot they had, software they signed up for on a free trial in 2021, an insurance policy that auto-renewed at a higher rate, a gym membership from when they were motivated in February, a credit card they put a small recurring charge on and never check, a monthly box service, a premium app tier, a cloud storage plan 3 levels above what they need. The average American household now has about $219 per month in recurring subscription costs, according to a survey by C+R Research, which doesn't sound catastrophic until you do the math. $219 a month is $2,628 a year. Over 5 years, that's $13,140 in charges most people cannot name if you ask them to list their subscriptions from memory. Over 10 years, invested instead at the historical market average, that's over $40,000.
$40,000 gone to services they have been meaning to cancel since last spring. But subscriptions are just the visible part. The invisible leak goes deeper. It's the lifestyle creep that arrived with every raise they ever got. It's the fact that when they started earning $55,000, they lived on $50,000. When they got to $65,000, they lived on $62,000. When they hit $75,000, somehow they needed every dollar of that too. The income went up, and the spending followed it like a shadow, staying close enough that the gap never really widened. This pattern has a name: lifestyle inflation. And it is the single most common reason high-income people have low savings. Income is not the variable that produces $100,000. The gap between income and spending is the variable. A person earning $60,000 and spending $48,000 will reach $100,000 in savings faster than a person earning $95,000 and spending $93,000 every single time. The people who crack this level track their spending. Not obsessively, not with a spreadsheet that takes 4 hours a month to maintain. But they look. They know their number. They run the audit once a quarter, pull up the last 90 days of transactions, and ask one question:
Does this reflect what I actually value, or is it just the residue of decisions I stopped making intentionally? That question alone, asked honestly and repeatedly, is worth more than any raise.
Reason 4. The debt they are carrying is compounding faster than their savings. This one is not complicated, but it is brutal. Americans collectively carry over $1.2 trillion in credit card debt right now. The average household balance is over $9,000. The average interest rate on that debt is approximately 22 to 23%. Let that land for a second. 23% interest, compounding monthly, against you. The S&P 500 has returned about 10% per year on average over the last century. That is one of the greatest wealth-building engines in human history, and it is less than half the interest rate on the average credit card balance. This means that for every dollar a person puts into a savings account or index fund while carrying credit card debt, they are gaining 4 or 5 or maybe 7% on that dollar in one account while losing 22% on the same dollar in another account. The math is not close. It is not even a conversation. Carrying credit card debt while trying to build savings is the financial equivalent of filling a bathtub with the drain open. You can keep adding water forever. The tub will not fill. And yet, this is exactly what most people do. They keep a savings account and a credit card balance running simultaneously. The savings account makes them feel responsible. The credit card balance quietly cancels all of it. The sequence matters. Credit card debt at 20% or above gets eliminated before anything else. Before the Roth IRA, before the brokerage account, before the high-yield savings push. There is no investment that beats paying off 22% interest debt risk-free. None. The first $100,000 becomes dramatically more reachable the moment you stop fighting compound interest on two fronts at once. Reason 5. They do not understand the specific mathematics of the first $100,000. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's late business partner, one of the greatest financial minds of the last century, said something that I think about constantly. He said that the first $100,000 is a grind, a genuine, painful, unrewarding grind, and that you have to do it by any means necessary. Walk everywhere, eat nothing that wasn't bought with a coupon, whatever it takes, because until you reach that number, the math is working against your psychology. He was right, and here is why. When you have $10,000 saved and you earn 7% in a year, you made $700. That is 2 trips to the grocery store. Your brain registers it as nothing. It barely moves the needle. The emotional reward for a full year of discipline is a number you could earn in a single Saturday of overtime. When you have $50,000 saved and you earn 7%, you made $3,500. Better, still not exciting. When you have $100,000 saved and you earn 7%, you made $7,000. Now you are earning more from interest in a year than many people save in a year. The dynamic is shifting. The money is starting to pull its own weight. And when you have $200,000 saved, that same 7% is $14,000 a year. Passive, while you sleep, while you work, while you do nothing at all. This is why the first $100,000 is the hardest. Not because the discipline required is greater, the discipline is identical at every level. It is because the feedback, the visible evidence that what you were doing is working, is essentially invisible until you cross that threshold. The rewards of compounding are backloaded almost insultingly far. You put in years of effort and the scoreboard barely moves. Then something shifts and it starts moving faster than you can track.
The people who never cross $100,000 are not making a rational decision to quit. They are quitting because the early stages of compounding are designed to feel pointless. They look at $14,000 after 3 years of sacrifice and they make a completely logical conclusion. This is not working. And they stop. They spend the money. They take the vacation. They buy the truck. They tell themselves they will start again when things settle down. Things do not settle down. And the years they spent contributing are the years that mathematically would have been worth the most. A dollar invested at 25 has roughly 40 years to compound at 7%. That single dollar becomes about $15. A dollar invested at 35 becomes about $7.60. The difference between those $2 is not the dollar. It is the decade of runway. And every year you delay the first $100,000 is a year you are cutting off the highest return end of your investing window.
Reason 6. They are saving, but not in the right order. There is a sequence to building the first $100,000 that most people skip because nobody ever lays it out clearly. And the sequence matters because the order you put money into different vehicles determines how hard that money works.
First, employer 401k match. If your employer matches your contributions and you are not taking the full match, you are leaving free money on the table. 100% return on every matched dollar before the market does anything. This should be the first dollar funded every single time. Second, high interest debt. Anything above 7 or 8% interest gets eliminated before anything else. The return on paying off 20% debt is 20%. No investment reliably beats that. Third, emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of actual expenses in a high-yield savings account. Not a checking account earning 0.01%. A high-yield account earning 4 to 5%. This is the buffer that stops setbacks from becoming reversals. Without it, every unexpected expense pulls from the investment accounts and resets the clock. Fourth, Roth IRA. If you qualify, max it. In 2024, that's $7,000. The money grows tax-free. When you withdraw it in retirement, the IRS takes nothing. That is an enormous structural advantage. Fifth, back to the 401k, up to the annual maximum. Sixth, taxable brokerage account with low-cost index funds. Most people have never seen this sequence laid out. They are putting money into a savings account while ignoring a 401k match, or maxing out a brokerage account while carrying a credit card at 22%, or keeping cash in a checking account earning nothing when a high-yield savings account would pay them 5 times more for the identical risk. The order is not complicated, but it is specific, and specificity is exactly what produces $100,000 instead of $14,000.
Reason 7. They have no clear finish line. Here is the last reason, and it is psychological, but it is just as important as all the math. Most people who fail to reach $100,000 don't have a date. They have a direction. They want to save more. They want to do better. They want to eventually have enough. These are not goals. They are feelings, and feelings do not produce outcomes the way targets do. The research on this is clear. A 2002 study published in the Journal of Applied Psychology found that specific, challenging goals led to significantly higher performance than vague, do your best instructions. In financial terms, I want to reach $100,000 in liquid savings by December of 2028 is a completely different cognitive object than I want to save more money. One produces a monthly target, a timeline, a decision framework for every spending choice. The other produces good intentions. The people who cross $100,000 have a number and a date, and they work backwards. They know exactly how much they need to save per month to get there. They know what that requires in terms of income versus spending. They know the specific accounts it will live in, and they review the number quarterly to see if they are on track. The goal is not abstract. It lives in a spreadsheet. It has a column for actual versus projected. It is boring. It is unglamorous. It is working.
So let's bring this together. The $100,000 barrier breaks down to this. Most people are paying themselves last, operating without structural savings buckets, bleeding money through invisible recurring costs and lifestyle inflation they never audit, fighting compound interest from 2 directions at once, with savings on one side and credit card debt on the other, and quitting during the stage of compounding that is designed to look like nothing is happening, right before the math flips in their favor. And they are doing all of this without a specific target or a timeline. They are just vaguely moving in a direction and hoping momentum appears. The people who crack it flip all 7 of those. They automate savings before lifestyle sees the money. They build a structure with separate labeled buckets. They audit spending ruthlessly and protect the gap between income and expenses. They sequence the accounts correctly. They understand that the first $100,000 is supposed to feel like it isn't working, and they have a date. None of this requires a higher income. Some of it helps. But the Federal Reserve data is very clear that income is not the primary driver of savings accumulation. Behavior is. The survey shows households earning over $100,000 a year with less than $5,000 saved. It shows households earning $55,000 with $200,000 in liquid assets. The income is almost a distraction. The system is the thing.
Charlie Munger was right about the first $100,000. It is a grind. It is the hardest stretch of the entire journey because the feedback is invisible and the temptations are very visible. Every month, you are choosing a balance sheet nobody can see over a lifestyle your neighbors absolutely can. That trade is hard. Nobody tells you it is hard. They just talk about compound interest like it is a magical escalator you step onto and ride to wealth. It is not an escalator. It is a staircase with no lights and no windows, and the only way to know you are making progress is to count your steps and trust the math. But here is what the math promises, and the math keeps its promises. If you save $1,000 a month and invest it in a basic S&P 500 index fund, you will cross $100,000 in approximately 7 years. If you save $1,500 a month, you get there in under 5. And once you are there, once you have $100,000 doing its job in the market, the rate of change shifts permanently. Your money starts generating returns that rival your monthly contributions. The second 100,000 comes faster. The third, faster still. The curve that looked completely flat for years suddenly starts bending upward, and it does not stop. The people who will be quietly wealthy in 20 years are not necessarily earning the most right now. They are the ones who understand what the first $100,000 actually requires, who build the system instead of relying on the motivation, and who do not quit during the part that looks like nothing is happening. You are probably closer than you think, and the gap between where you are and where you want to be is almost never as wide as it feels at 11 p.m. in a parking lot staring at your savings account. But the gap is real, and it requires something specific to close it. Not harder work, a better system. Hit the subscribe button so I can keep making these for you. Drop a comment and tell me where you are right now. $0, $10,000, $50,000, wherever. I read all of them. And if there's a reason you've been stuck that I didn't mention, put it in the comments. I'm always building the next video from exactly those conversations. I'll see you in the next one.